Hi, everyone. My name is Laurence. I'm the Director for AI Innovation in AI Singapore. Thanks for staying back for this session. What I'm going to talk about today, I won't talk too much about AI per se, or delve very much into data and so on, because I assume the audience here actually have the technical knowledge behind most of the words that you see here. But I want to help clarify why I feel that this statement, mitigating AI risks with data accuracy and ethics, is fundamentally incorrect. I'm not saying that there are no risks in using AI systems. There are plenty of risks. As you can see from these two examples, Apple Card and Amazon both got into a little bit of a PR nightmare when the AI systems that they used, people deem it to be very biased. But what's important to note is that in these two examples, it actually has fundamentally nothing to do with the AI system per se. I believe it is because the person or the team that built this was very inexperienced. And for some of you who have been in the data field for a long time, and especially data mining 20 or 30 years ago, you will know that this is data mining 101. If you never curate your data sets properly, or you never balance out your data sets, you'll get into these issues. So this is basically data mining 101 mistakes that this so-called AI or machine learning engineer made in deploying such systems. So a little bit about the organization that I come from. AI Singapore, we were launched in May 2017. It's a national R&D program. Well, they claim it's the first of its kind, where we try to bring in both industry, academia, and the government to help solve AI problems, create AI solutions for Singapore. We have a few key missions. Obviously, to build deep capabilities in AI, making sure that there's both social and economic impacts from the projects that we do, to grow the local talent pool, accelerate the AI ecosystem. So this is the one that my so-called department is very involved in. So in AI Singapore, we have basically 4 departments or 4 pillars. AI research funds fundamental research in AI. So they give out an annual grant. They throw an annual grant call. Professors, researchers from the local universities will put up proposals and try to bid for that grant. Very academic. The AI technology team tried to solve national level or very important, not necessarily business issues, but Singapore problem statements that we think AI can be used. So one of the many programs that they have is they have a grand challenge, they have price-based challenge, technology challenges, and so on. So the first grand challenge that they threw more than, I guess, 3 years ago was in healthcare. How do you reduce or slow down the progression of the 3H by 20% over 5 years? 3H being high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and you get high sugar, diabetes, basically. So they put together like 3 teams of professors and clinicians, nearly 15 to 20 in each team, and they try to solve the problem, and they are now in the final stage. AI governance is slightly newer. They focus on AI ethics and the governance of AI. Again, this is very much research-based. The professors here, which is run by the NUS Dean of Law School, will be looking at proposals from researchers that he can fund ongoing research. My piece is the innovation and maker space, and it is all about helping industries to build AI solutions. So, over the last 4 years, I keep getting the numbers mixed up. This May, I guess, this month actually, AI Singapore will have been around for 5 years. But the 100 experiments program that I run actually started slightly 6 months, 7 months after the launch of the AI Singapore. So we are about 4.5 years old. So in 4.5 years, we have engaged more than 500 companies, whether it's SME, startups, government organizations, MNC. And of this 500 that we have engaged, not all, a large number of them have submitted a proposal to do 100 experiments. I'll talk about 100 experiments, what is it about later, because that ties into the AI ethics and data issues that we want to talk about. And we have approved about 90 of these proposals and completed more than half. And as you can see from this chart, we have basically an AI project in nearly every sector in Singapore. So my team, we are a bunch of AI engineers, and we basically build solutions day in, day out. Typically, each AI solution gets completed within 2 to 7 months. Who are some of the users or customers of the 100E program? We have helped IBM Tampines factory here to build an AI model to predict which of the products that they are producing may have very high RMA once it's launched into the market. We have helped Sompo Insurance to build a fraud detection module as part of their claims procedures. And in fact, this particular project actually won Sompo one of those insurance business awards 2 years ago. We have helped GIC to build a text analytics module to basically classify and rank the hundreds of documents that they get every day from all over the world, so that their analysts only needs to read maybe the top 5 or top 10 that is relevant to their area of work. So let's talk about risk management strategy. How is AI Singapore approaching this? I'm very sure nearly everyone here should already be very familiar with IMDA's AI governance framework, which was announced a couple of years back at Davos by Minister Iswaran. So the IMDA framework was announced in 2020. So our 100E actually has been ongoing even before that. So before the framework was announced by IMDA, we had our own internal checklist. And when the IMDA framework was announced, we basically adopted it. We simplified a little bit because our projects are very short, between 2 to 7 months. We don't need the whole spectrum of it. And in the 100E program, how it works is this: when you as a customer come to me, or as a potential client come to me, to say that I have an AI project, AI Singapore, can you help? We'll evaluate. We will look at what is it that you're trying to do, whether you have the data sets. And then if we think that it is something that we can support, we'll put it up to the committee for approval. And then AI Singapore will contribute $180,000 to $250,000 in kind. You will put one-to-one. Right? This is a government program that you have never experienced before, where we don't give you the money. You give us the money. Because even if I give you the money, you cannot hire the AI scientist and the AI engineer. They are very expensive, but I have tons of it within the university ecosystem. So we pool our money together, and then we assemble an AI engineering team to help you build your AI product or solution. Now, in doing this, as part of the whole approval process, we make sure that we follow this governance checklist. For those who are not familiar, please go and check it out. They even produce not just the paper to say what is, AI ethics, AI governance, what are the things that you must look at. But importantly, they even give you a handbook, a guide, right, to help you operationalize this as part of your AI process. Moving forward, the EU has also come up with their own framework, which is risk-based. And on the EU side, they will actually regulate AI. Whereas in Singapore, we are not at that stage yet. At the moment, it is, Mr. Company, this is a framework, please review and adopt. But in the EU, they are saying that we are going to put regulation into all AI systems. And the way they do it makes a lot of sense. It's based on the risk that the AI poses to humans, basically. So it goes from minimal, limited, high to unacceptable. Now, you have to remember, EU and Asia, or in particular Singapore, culturally, we are very different. What is unacceptable in EU may actually be acceptable in Singapore. There is some risk. For example, very simply, facial recognition. In the EU, they are slowly removing all facial recognition systems, right? Even the police are being faced with the issue, can they continue? Some countries have voted against it. But in Singapore, it is all over us. And I think for majority of Singaporeans and locals here, they don't really bother too much about it. What are other things that we are doing? I think standards is very important in AI. I'm the chair of the AI technical committee here in Singapore, and we drive and try to drive certain standards or get to adopt, or we try to get companies to adopt certain AI standards as come up. But we also create our own AI standards. In fact, we have just recently announced and published the TR99, which is an AI standard in AI security. Now, AI security is not security as in the sense that most of the CIOs or security officers here will be familiar with. When we talk about AI model security, it is how secure and how robust the model is. A lot of the AI models can be tricked into saying that instead of this is a cat, you say that this is actually a dog. And how it's being tricked is just by a very expert hacker to tweak a few pixels in the video stream or the image that's being shown to the AI model. So how robust your AI model is to this sort of manipulation of the data that it's seeing. So this is a technical reference today, but the team is working towards making it a standard. So we incorporate all these best practices into our ongoing AI development cycles. So in the 100E, typically organizations work with us at least a year, right? The engagement will start. It will take 2 to 3 months to get your project approved, and then once the project starts, it will take 7 months before outcome gets delivered to you. So coming back to this statement, right, mitigating AI risks with data accuracy and ethics, right? So I asked, if I can solve the problem without using AI and just use traditional procedural programming, I do not need to mitigate risk. Does it make sense? So why is it that we are saying that we need to mitigate AI risks with data accuracy and ethics? If data is not clean or accurate, even BI projects would fail. Or worse, the business would fail, like what the panel was discussing about earlier. So having clean, accurate data is key to business survival. It has nothing to do with AI. And AI ethics. Again, AI is really just a set of mathematical algorithms, right? It has no feelings, at least not yet, and hence it cannot be unethical. Okay? It is just maths, right? AI does not have consciousness or the ability to act responsibly or irresponsibly. So, the right questions you need to ask has actually nothing to do with AI, right? What you need to ask when you want to implement a project that uses AI is it the right thing to do? Should I implement this, right? How does this service or solution impact my customers? And if, let's say, for the government officers here, how does this policy impact my citizens? Right? If you want to talk about ethical use of a technology, it has nothing to do with AI per se, right? The key thing is the business case or the policy that you want to implement ethical or not? So with this, I end my presentation. I'm not sure whether we can have time for questions, 1 or 2 questions.
Yes. Thank you, Laurence. I write for the data science and AI newsletter for CDOTrends, and I think I learned quite a bit of stuff from your presentation. So maybe just take one question from the floor. Let's come a bit nearer. So you talk about biased data sets just now, right? I mean, people corrupting and basically hacking the AI models. So how do you ensure that your pre-trained AI models, somehow did not use biased data? And if they have, what's the, I don't know if that's a word, debiasing strategy?
Well, there are a lot of research going on, and there are certain algorithms that can actually tell you how biased the data sets is, or at least the data sets is. I'm not sure whether there's any that can tell you, the pre-trained model how biased it is, but there's probably some that can. But I think a more important question is, especially for the CDOs here, and where you need to work with your legal and all, right? There's a lot of questions being asked now. And in fact, Google in UK is in a bit of a legal issue because they have now been sued by a class action suit to say that they use the data of the healthcare, and I know there was healthcare person here, and they did not get consent, although the data was provided to them by the national health authorities in the UK. So, biasness aside, which is important, and there are algorithms that can do that, and if you have a good team of data, not engineers, data curators, people who actually curate the data, understand the domain and is able to curate the data, so that you don't get into the situations that Amazon and Apple got into, you can actually get to a state where the data is not so biased. And often, it's very hard to outsource some of this work because you need to have that domain expertise, the cultural, the local cultural familiarities. I remember one project where they outsourced the whole labeling of the data sets to overseas, and it's not going to work because those people, whether it's in India or China, will not understand our local lingo, la, law, char kway teow. They won't understand, right? They won't understand the context of how a particular phrase is being used. Yeah. So their biasness, when you want to think of how to unbias it, there are a number of strategies. And more importantly, I think the very important questions that are being asked today is, when you train a model, your model has get its weights, right? The neural nets and so on, it has its weights in there. And if, assuming one day you try to sell your model all over the world, including EU, one of your customers come to you, a European customer come to you and say, please remove my data from your model. How are you going to do that? How are you going to extract out his data from your set of weights that has been trained from millions of people? So that's also a very big headache that everybody is grappling with, and there's actually no answer, right? So I sit on several committees that look at the legal and IP issues of weights and so on, and I can tell you we are still a number of years away before some of this will be fully worked out.